Hello everyone, enjoy today's episode of Genesis of Lands. Watch, learn and listen, and don't forget to subscribe. Ciao ciao.
There's a city in Morocco where the sky touches the ground, where every wall, every staircase, every doorway bleeds in shades of blue, cobalt, azure, cerulean, indigo, where walking through the streets feels less like exploring a town and more like swimming through heaven itself. 8,000 feet up in the Rift Mountains, hidden between two peaks that look like horns rising from the earth. A fortress that became a refuge that became a legend painted in every shade of blue you've ever imagined. But here's what they don't tell you. This city wasn't always blue. It was built in blood and exile, by a warrior fleeing Portuguese cannons, by Jews escaping the Spanish Inquisition, by Muslims driven from Granada with nothing but memories and rage. And somewhere between survival and sanctuary they painted the walls. Not for tourists, not for Instagram, but for reasons lost to time, debated by locals and whispered through generations. Was Chefchaouen painted blue to remember God? To repel mosquitoes? To stay cool in the Moroccan heat? Or was it simply because blue reminded them of a sky they could no longer call home? The answer might be all of them, or none of them. But one thing is certain. This city was never meant to be seen. It was meant to be hidden. The Reconquista was tightening its grip. Catholic Spain was conquering the last Muslim territories in Iberia. Portugal was pushing into northern Morocco, seizing cities along the coast. Sayyida fell. Tangier was under siege. The Muslim world was being crushed between two Christian empires. A warrior named Moulay Ali Ben Rashid stood in the ruins of his homeland. He was a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad himself. A noble, a military commander, a man who had fought in Granada and watched it crumble under Christian banners. He refused to surrender, so he fled south, into the Rift Mountains, to a place no army would bother to follow. A valley between two peaks, Jebel el-Kila and Jebel Tasuka. Mountains so steep, so remote they looked like horns rising from the earth. In the Berber language they called it Chefchaouen. Look at the horns. Moulay Ali Ben Rashid built a fortress there. A small kasbah. Just walls. Just defense. Just survival. The Portuguese were coming. And he would be ready. But it wasn't just him. Within years, waves of refugees poured into Chefchaouen. Muslims fleeing Spain after the fall of Granada in 1492. Jews escaping forced conversion under Ferdinand and Isabella. Moriscos expelled by Philip III in 1609. They came with nothing. No land. No power. No future. Just the clothes on their backs and the trauma of exile. And they rebuilt. Street by street. Stone by stone. They carved narrow alleyways that twisted and climbed like rivers of rock. They built homes in the Andalusian style. Whitewashed courtyards. Citrus trees. Tiled roofs. Architecture that reminded them of Granada. Of Seville. Of Cordoba. Of everything they had lost. Chefchaouen became a city of ghosts. A living memory of a world that no longer existed. And then they started painting the walls blue. No one knows exactly when, or exactly why. The locals will tell you different stories depending on who you ask. Some say it was the Jews. That after fleeing Nazi persecution in the 1930s, they brought a tradition from their faith. In Judaism, blue thread is woven into prayer shawls to remind believers of the sky, of heaven, of God's presence above. They painted their homes blue to feel closer to the divine, to remember that even in exile, God was watching. Others say the blue came earlier, that the original Jewish settlers in the 15th century painted the Mellah, the Jewish quarter, in blue long before World War II, that it was always part of their spiritual practice, a way to sanctify their new home after being driven from the old one. But there are other theories, practical ones. Locals will tell you the blue keeps mosquitoes away, that insects mistake the color for water and avoid landing on the walls. Some say it keeps the houses cool in the summer, that light blue reflects heat better than white or tan. And then there's the simplest explanation. Blue is the color of peace, of calm, of tranquility. In Islamic culture, blue represents happiness and optimism. Maybe they painted Chefchaouen blue because after decades of war and exile, they just wanted to feel peace. Or maybe, just maybe, they painted it blue because it looked like the sky. And the sky was the one thing no empire could take from them. Whatever the reason, the practice spread. By the 20th century, nearly every building in the old Medina was painted blue. And every year residents repaint, layer after layer, generation after generation, keeping the blue alive. But Chefchaouen wasn't just a refuge. It became a fortress city in its own right. And it was ruled by one of the most extraordinary women in Moroccan history, Sayyida al-Hurra, the pirate queen of the Mediterranean. She was born in Chefchaouen around 1491, the daughter of Moulay Ali Ben Rashid, the city's founder. Her mother was Lala Zora Fernandez, a Spanish Christian who converted to Islam. Sayyida grew up speaking Arabic, Spanish, and Portuguese. She studied theology, mathematics, diplomacy, and military strategy. And she never forgave Spain for what they did to her family. In 1510, she married the governor of Tétouan, a coastal city near Chefchaouen. When he died in 1515, she didn't step aside. She took power. She became the sole ruler of Tétouan, and she turned it into a pirate stronghold. Sayyida al-Hurra allied with the infamous Ottoman Admiral Hayreddin Barbarossa. Together, they controlled the western Mediterranean. She commanded fleets of corsairs who raided Spanish and Portuguese ships, capturing cargo, taking prisoners, demanding ransoms. Europeans called her a pirate. She called it jihad, revenge for the Reconquista, for Granada, for the thousands of Muslims and Jews driven from their homes. In 1541, the Sultan of Morocco proposed marriage to her. But Sayyida refused to leave Tétouan. So the Sultan did something unprecedented. He traveled to her city for the wedding. The only time in Moroccan history a king married outside his capital. She ruled Tétouan for 30 years. But in 1542, her son-in-law overthrew her in a coup. She lost everything. Her city, her power, her fleet. She returned to Chefchaouen, to the blue city her father had built. And she lived there quietly until 1561. She was the last woman in Islamic history to hold the title al-Hurra, the independent lady, the free woman. And today her tomb rests in Chefchaouen, in the city painted the color of the sky. For centuries, Chefchaouen remained isolated. Foreigners were forbidden from entering, Christians especially. The city became a closed sanctuary, a place where Andalusian culture survived long after Spain erased it from the map. It wasn't until 1920 that the outside world came crashing in. Spanish forces, led by General de Miso Berenguer, captured Chefchaouen during the Rif War. Spain controlled the city until Morocco gained independence in 1956. And then, slowly, the world discovered the Blue Pearl. By the 1960s, travelers began arriving. Hippies, backpackers, artists, drawn by the surreal beauty, the labyrinthine streets, the blue walls that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Today, Chefchaouen is one of Morocco's most photographed cities. Instagram made it famous. Pinterest turned it into an aesthetic. Tourism keeps the blue paint flowing. But walk through the Medina at dawn before the tour buses arrive, and you'll still feel what the refugees felt. The weight of exile. The beauty of survival. The quiet defiance of a people who refuse to disappear. You'll see old men in striped jalabas sitting outside cafes, sipping mint tea. Women in bright headscarves selling hand-woven blankets in the souks. Children playing soccer in narrow alleys where the walls are painted 12 different shades of blue. You'll climb steep staircases that twist between buildings. You'll pass doorways painted cobalt, turquoise, powder blue. You'll lose yourself in the maze of color. And if you hike up to the Spanish mosque at sunset, you'll look down at the entire city spread below you. A sea of blue rooftops. Minarets rising like ships' masts. The Rif Mountains looming in the distance. And you'll understand why they painted it this color. Because blue is the color of exile, of memory, of a homeland you can't return to, so you build it in paint, layer by layer, year by year, until the whole city becomes a prayer. From a fortress in 1471 to a refuge for the displaced to a pirate queen's hometown to a tourist destination to a living monument to survival. Chefchaouen is proof that exile doesn't erase a people. It transforms them. The Andalusian Muslims didn't just flee Spain. They brought Andalusia with them. They rebuilt Granada in the mountains. They carved Córdoba into stone. They painted Seville onto walls. And they chose blue. Not red for blood. Not black for mourning. But blue. For the sky. For hope. For the belief that even when you lose everything, you can still paint beauty into existence. So here's the question. If you were driven from your home, what color would you choose to remember it? What would you paint on the walls to prove you survived? The people of Chefchaouen chose blue. And centuries later, the city still glows with it. Every morning, when the sun rises over the Rif Mountains and hits those walls, it doesn't just illuminate the stone. It illuminates memory itself. Chefchaouen, the Blue Pearl, the city where refugees became builders, where exiles became artists, where survival became sacred. A fortress painted the color of heaven. A city that refused to disappear. A place where every shade of blue tells the same story. We were here. We are still here. And we will never forget.